good security. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start at the UNRWA funding and what's going on with that. And we're going to end this part talking about what James Lindsay's talking about. But I think it's a really important aspect of this. So we're going to start talking about funding of the UNRWA and how that is being structured and whatever, and the fact that Canada has not missed a payment. But we're going to end by talking about how the Palestinian protests, the violent Palestinian protests, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protests, are paid for, and they're a perfect wedge, just like Black Lives Matter. And they're a perfect wedge because people get emotionally involved and they can't see the red flags. All they see is the outrage. Here's a quick story that illustrates what I'm talking about. I used to work in children's mental health. I worked with a lot of women. One woman had a particular dislike for the word, starts with a C and rhymes with punt. Okay. She hated it and told the kids that she hated it. And so when the kids would get upset, they would use that word and it would tick her off. She was so emotionally invested, so emotionally tied up with that word and unable to see that she, one, gave the kids the power to wind her up like that. And two, the kids were just winding her up. I was like, if you just ignore them doing that, you'd be way more chill. You gotta chill out, right? And so that's what's happening with these people. They're getting they're saying that's anti-Semitic, right? And they're losing their minds. That's anti-Islamophobic or Islamophobic, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. That's racist. That's against an orange shirt, or that's against the rainbow mafia, or whatever it is, right? That is intolerable. And they lose themselves in that, and they can't see, or it takes them a while to see that they've been bamboozled. And James Lindsay goes through this unbelievably well. And he says that basically during that period of time that you've been bamboozled, they have time, that runway is built, and they have time to bomb our society with this false misrepresentation of reality in order to get us to attack each other. And that's what's going on. And so I'm saying these Black Lives Matter protests are the same as these Palestinian protests, are the same as the Israeli protests, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same. It's all contrived. It's all paid for by the same people. And it is an attack on the West, using our own rules of freedom of speech, et cetera, against us to destroy our culture. That's the whole point. James Lindsay's bang on nailed it. If you've got 2 hours, listen. I'm almost tempted to cut this down to a 15-minute or 10-minute talk where he's just talking about that aspect of it, how people get so lost in their own emotional reaction that they can't see the red flags from the trees, right? And it's crazy. And I'll let James talk about it when we get there. So first, here's Son of a Bench, and he's sharing this CBC article, The Trudeau Liberal Government to Resume Funding for UNRWA. The agency has been linked to having staff that were part of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. The pro-Palestinian movement is strong in Canada. Cha-ching, money, 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 money. That's motivation. Money, motivation. That'll get people out in the streets. Not losing their freedom. Cash money. How much is for this protest? Oh, free? No, I can't. I'm busy that day. Awaiting the thank you videos from the Hamas leaders, which we got before. Thank you very much. Yes, we did. Canadian government will resume funding to United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, says a source. Ottawa paused funding after Israeli government alleged organization staff were connected to Hamas attack. The federal government is resuming funding to the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, CBC News has learned. In addition to going ahead with the scheduled payment in April of $25 million, Canada's International Development Minister also intends to announce new funding, according to a senior government official. The Canadian government announced a pause on funding in January after Israel alleged that 12 employees of UNRWA were involved in some capacity in the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas and the affiliated group Islamic Jihad. UNRWA moved quickly to fire the 12 staff members on January 26 as soon as Israel made its allegations. The government source says Canadian officials have received an interim report from the United Nations examining the allegations. Based on that information, the Canadian government is comfortable resuming funding, the source said. So there you go. Here's your money back, right? And Senator Housakis is citing the same story, and he says, disgraceful. In reality, UNRWA didn't even miss one payment from Canada, and now they're actually getting additional funding. That and the lawlessness we've seen in our streets sends one message to the mobs, and it's not a good one. So this is all fuel for the emotional fire, right? Everybody is emotional about this. So you can't see what's going on versus the manipulation. You can't discern that because you're so emotionally invested. Whereas to me, it seems really clear. It seems really, really clear. And the way to stop it seems also very clear. Stop funding all of it. Stop giving money to these people. Honestly, build roads in Canada. Build pipelines in Canada. Provincial pipelines. I think that's the key. Provincial pipelines. All the premiers should build pipelines and like agree roughly where the pipelines are going to meet up. Like this is where the coordinates are going to be in Ontario. This is where they're going to be on the east side and the west side of Ontario to meet up with the Atlantic provinces and so on. Build a pipeline. Let's have a national pipeline. Get our product to Tidewater. Anyway, I digress. Melissa Lantsman's getting this as well, or she's getting emotionally involved as well. She's responding to this news article. Canadian government will resume funding to the United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, same one. And she says, so Justin Trudeau cut off funding, in quotes, by prepaying your tax dollars to UNRWA in March, only to resume funding in April because UNRWA workers actively participated in the October 7th rape, murder, kidnapping of innocent people because their facilities are used for Hamas terror infrastructure, because they employ hundreds of people with direct ties to terror groups, because they indoctrinate children with extremism. Now, see, now that you know this is supposed to get you stirred up emotionally in order to get you on board with the response, doesn't it hit different, right? Like if you came upon this and you were like, they did what? Right? But if you understand the context, like, and there's a lot more context, and it's the bamboozle is for the Canadian people. We're having our tax dollars go to fund an agency in a foreign country that doesn't do any good for anybody, right? And we're being emotionally blackmailed in order to continue doing this. And that's a conservative. Karma Syed, she says, police asked for a path to be cleared so a guest can make his way to the York Centre Federal Liberal Association dinner. Protesters scoff at the request and begin chanting for the event to be cancelled. And Michael Taube says, this is ridiculous. If Toronto police are going to let a mob like this one dictate the proceedings as this video clearly shows, why are they even there? Good question. It's interesting because the Freedom Convoy never did anything like this, yet they're vilified. And these people are being celebrated and supported, and their protest is allowed, as demonstrated by the police being completely powerless to do a darn thing. Anything. And I've seen reports as well that the police have been told to stand down by the upper echelon. I'll see if I can grab that. Hold on. I can't find it, but it was basically saying that it was an MP, and I thought it was Dan McTeague, but it wasn't. It's another Dan, but I can't remember the guy's name, and it's just not on my feed, so apologies about that. But it was basically saying that the police know that they can't respond when they get there. They've been told from this top to observe and just monitor and basically do nothing. And so that's not good, because that indicates that these people have much more protection than indicated, right? The truckers weren't protesting in a protected protest. They were protesting against the government. And these people seem to be protesting in a different environment. Here is Flavio, and he says, Toronto has a law enforcement vacuum, emboldened anarchists pretending to care for the victims of a war in the Middle East are overrunning police in the city. Yes. Remember when the police showed up and gave coffee and donuts to them, the pro-Palestinian protesters? I don't think, were they doing that for the Freedom Convoy guys? Terry says, correct. These were never protests aimed at persuading the public to a standpoint. From the beginning, they have always been about intimidation, and they were never pro-Palestinian. They were anti-Israel and pro-intifada, not anti-war, pro-violence. I could agree there. And same with the Black Lives Matter protests. The Black Lives Matter protests were all about tearing things down, tearing statues down. James Lindsay explains why, because he says, and I think he's going to say it in the clip I'm going to show, it's medium long, but he basically says destruction is part and parcel of the revolution. They're not trying to maintain anything. It's a revolution, comrade. They want everything destroyed. So if they break it, they can't use it, but neither can you, right? And the cultural stuff they're doing, the removal of the statues and stuff, that's on purpose, right? And it is not a mistake. Anthony Coach says, the situation in this country is rapidly deteriorating and government and law enforcement is doing nothing to stop it. What's it going to take? Tracy Wilson says, death, when someone dies, they'll be forced to act. Maybe even then it's doubtful. Terrifying times. If somebody dies, they'll do a George Floyd moment. If somebody dies, especially if it's a trans person or a drag queen or something like that, this is James Lindsay's central argument. He says, wait for the trans Floyd moment. And basically what he's saying is when something like that happens, now that's an accelerant, because now there's the justification for cracking down on anybody who disagrees with this. Right? We told you that this was happening, and now this incident's happened that proves that what we were saying is right. And now we have to enact all these laws, these draconian laws, to make sure this never happens again. It's the Hegelian dialect, right? Like action, reaction, solution, right? And it's all contrived. Man, like seriously, James Lindsay knows his poop. So we're going to listen to this very briefly. Medium long being like 2 minutes, I think, but it's impactful, and like honestly watch the whole thing. But this is where he's talking about this section here from like an hour into an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes, I think, talking about basically how the action reaction solution can be turned around on them, flipped on them, and used against them by basically giving context to the audience. Here's James Lindsay.
And then destructive, they are. Often the destruction is the point, as a matter of fact. Why would they just destroy that thing? Because it's either under their control, which is great, or it's destroyed, which is good from their perspective. The backup plan to the I can't control this for a leftist is it's broken and nobody can have it. So they have nothing to preserve. This is a revolution, comrade. So you have to start asking yourself, try to understand, what is the point? If this thing that's in front of me isn't real totally, it's contrived, and it has a purpose, an operational purpose, what would the point of the operation be?
Black Lives Matter, okay? If this thing in front of us isn't real, if it's contrived, what would the point maybe be? The Intifada stuff, the Palestinian stuff, the mall shootings, all of the stuff under that umbrella. If this thing isn't real, if it's contrived, what could it be? What could operationally they be trying to achieve with it?
Is this thing a psyops? Is it an active measure, more accurately? And if it is, maybe it's not. Maybe it's really something going on. But if it's not, what would its point be? And if you can start to see the point, you might start to see the move. And you start to see the move, you might understand the play. And if you understand the play, then you can put the defense in the spot to stop it.
And then he goes further. It's so worth it. But basically, like 100%, if you're standing on a football field and you've got a team of people who don't understand the game, and a team of people who've won the Super Bowl, okay? And the Super Bowl team snaps the ball, and the group of people standing opposing the Super Bowl team looks at each other and goes, "Do you understand what just happened?" And somebody kind of shrugs, and the team runs a play and they score a touchdown. That's fundamentally what's happening right now. They're doing their action, they're executing a play, and we're standing around going, "Do you know what they just did?" And people are going, and there's one guy who's screaming, going, "Stop them! Stop the guy with the ball! Take him down! That's the game! Take him down!" And we're all going, "Should we go and get that guy? What do we do?" That's how lost we are. That's how completely out to lunch we are with what's going on and our response. Honestly, it's absolutely bonkers. It's completely round the bend, crazy. And it's only because we have no idea that we're playing a game, and also no idea the game's rules. James Lindsay knows the game's rules. He's screaming, "Get the guy with the ball, tackle him, please God, tackle him." Because if not, we lose everything. Lose everything. Squinty Noodle says, "Can we sue Melanie Joly and Justin Trudeau to stop them continuing to send money and other resources to Ukraine too?" Apparently, Palestinian Canadians are going to sue Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, alleging Canada's military exports to Israel are illegal. Now, to continue my analogy about the football game, if instead you had another Super Bowl team against, or not even another Super Bowl team, a team that understood the strategy and you understood the play they were running, Statue of Liberty or, Hail Mary play or something like that, you could put in maybe an effective strategy to counter the play. You might be able to sully their attempt. You might be able to delay them a couple of downs, right? Like maybe you're a high school team, right? But you understand the game. And so you can listen to what they're doing and you can say, "Hey, hold on, this play, we have to stop them. And the right way to stop them is this play, get into this formation, blue 42 or whatever it is." And then they do. And then they execute the play to counter the other play and so on and so forth. And then you're on the field and then you're in the game, right? And so, hey, maybe we could sue Justin Trudeau and Melanie Joly for all of this kind of stuff. Maybe we could. Maybe that would be great, right? Who knows? It's a really weird, it's a really weird thing. But when you see it, you can't unsee it. Like when you see something that other people can't see, and then you can't unsee it, it also adds an isolation level. But I think that the more people who start to see it, like the chemtrails and the things that are going on in the sky, that starts to break down, and then people start talking about it. And I think it's necessary because you can't tell somebody about this kind of stuff. Like, it's isolating when you wake up and realize that like these things really are happening. But then you realize that there's a Star Trek episode where everybody starts disappearing into a blinking light, and then the only person left on the ship is Beverly Crusher, and staying on the ship is actually worse for Beverly Crusher than just going into the light. That's like this, right? Eventually, everybody's going to wake up. Eventually. And if you don't wake up, you're just going to be swallowed up by the Enterprise. So, I don't know. Let's move on. Let's talk about a grab bag of governance. Seamus O'Regan says, here in Canada, we look after each other, especially if you're Ukrainian or Palestinian, but not if you're Jewish. With healthcare, with childcare, with dental care, and soon with national universal pharmacare? No, that's not what's happening. It's single payer pharmacare for just a couple of things. And I don't think insulin and needles are included in that. This is a big deal for Canadian seniors, says Seamus. Nah, I don't think so. Cian Bexty is bankrolling through his website and through his countersignal billboards to recall Gondek. He says, let's get this done. On Saturday, we are launching our final billboard campaign outside of Calgary Mayor Gondek's office. The mainstream media has completely ignored this recall campaign, so we're going to let Calgary know about it, help us put more billboards up. So they've got billboards and a billboard campaign. It seems very Rebel News, but I mean, Cian cut his teeth in Rebel News. I don't mind. I wish Cian the most success. I hope that he does well. I think that there's things that our alt media does well. Like, there are certain things that are interesting that they do, like moves the True North makes, moves Cian makes, because he seems like an independent, kind of like me, but he seems more seasoned. He's been a reporter for Rebel News and things like that. So I don't know. But it seems to me like I don't begrudge the other people doing what they're doing, like kind of in this space. I wish them the best of luck. And I think it's interesting the things that they're able to do, things like this, like the billboards and things like that. I think that's really, really kind of cool. And like the Rebel does the trucks driving around. I think that's neat. But like, I wonder, like, what's the long-term plan? Like, is the counter signal going to be like the Globe and Mail or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, and it's just interesting. And I mean, because that kind of stuff does happen eventually. Like, the Globe and Mail started somewhere. The Globe and Mail didn't come out and say we are Canada's paper of record. New York Times didn't just say, hi, we're the New York Times, we're the paper of record, thanks very much. Like, they had to work for it, right? So eventually people in mid-level media become the mainstream media to a degree, especially if the mainstream media fails so spectacularly. Although, I mean, there have been other states where the mainstream media has failed spectacularly, gone full communist, state control, blah, blah, blah. And I think the mainstream media has come back, and you've got like secondary levels of media that are still occupying that space. I think I'll probably be a third tier media person for as long as I do this show. Like, it doesn't seem like not that I'm not able to grow, but I'm not doing what Cian's doing. Like, I'm not trying to put up billboards and things like that. Maybe I should do more stuff like that. I don't know. I wanted to mention I'm going on I'm doing a show in Durham at the end of March break. This is much smaller than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I'm doing a show in Durham, and so that'll be fun if you're interested in checking that out. But I don't do a lot of the same stuff that these guys do. These guys go out and break news. I just talk about news. So it's interesting. Different, but it's interesting. The only thing I begrudge those guys about is taking money from like the CPC and not being honest with their viewers about their bias, because it seems like they're not honest about that kind of stuff. But maybe I don't pay close enough attention. Maybe they tell people their bias like I tell people about chocolate cereal. Camaro Dom says, excuse me, Pierre Poilievre thinks that he can change the weather by building nuclear plants and forcing everyone to drive EVs. So this is an older clip. And one of the things that I actually wanted to highlight, you know what, maybe I'll bring this into election and we'll talk about something else first. We'll talk about Pierre Poilievre in just a second. Arif Varini is talking about La Presse, and La Presse is talking about the online harms bill. And Arif Varini, the Attorney General, says, Carol Todd, who lost her daughter Amanda to online sextortion, has made it clear that Amanda might still be alive today if a bill like C-63 were in effect. For too long, the online world has been home to child sexual exploitation. and violent threats. It's time we protect kids online. And I've been banging this drum since this online harms bill started. They're using protecting kids as protection for themselves from having to confront the censorship that's in the bill. And there are a whole bunch of people, although not enough. There's only less than 400 comments on this, 100 likes. So he's being ratioed, but it's not enough. People aren't nearly aware enough of this. They're going to push this through and highlight garbage like this La Presse article to justify it. But anyway, Lion Advocacy says, this has got to be the most shameful exploitation of this kind of tragedy I've ever seen. Utterly disgraceful. So, and a lot of the comments are like that. These people are not buying what the justice minister is selling. Here is Mark Friesen. And what I wanted to highlight on this was the spin doctors and the people who told Poilievre to remove the glasses were 100% right. This is going back like 6 months, maybe just after leadership, or maybe a year, right? So he's not all that different. Like this is maybe just before the leadership. It's not around November or anything like that. So, but I don't know exactly when this video was taken. Here he's talking about EVs. It's 30 seconds. I don't care so much about the EV policy. I think that a lot of people are being bamboozled by this EV thing, this green technology thing. And there's a lot of money going into it. So, I'm trying to look past that. Just look at his look. It's very, very different then compared to now. And I think that there's a big difference. So at first I thought it was minor. And now I think that it's actually quite a big change. So interesting to look at the spin doctors and the appearance coaches and things like that, style coaches, and to see that, I mean, yeah, it's like staging a house almost. Like the house might be nice, but you can sell it for $20,000 or $30,000 more if you stage it right. So anyway, same with Pierre Poilievre. Take the glasses off, change the, like, not as uptight type deal. Anyway, watch, here we go.
We propose to lower the cost of carbon-free alternatives by speeding up approval for tidal energy in Nova Scotia, which Trudeau is killing, by speeding up approval for safe, clean, emissions-free nuclear, by getting out of the way so that Quebec can double the amount of hydroelectricity that it supplies to its grid through its dams, which will be necessary to feed electric cars going into the future. We propose to lower the cost of carbon.
So he just looks very different. And the polls are, I've never seen Trudeau weaker. Honestly, here's the real Albanian, and I don't know how many in this Nanos poll. I don't know how many people, like what the methodology is. Hold on, let's see if they say 1,000. 1,000 people. Polls with 1,000 people are kind of junk. Like you can get 1,000 people to say almost anything. This one's showing a conservative supermajority with the Liberals at 44 seats, which that's very, very low. The lowest I'd seen up until this point is 53 seats. So that's 44 seats, very low. 39 seats for the NDP. Wouldn't it be funny if, remember when Mulcair was the opposition and the Liberals were the third party, right? And then they got Trudeau back to save them. Trudeau has now destroyed them. So here's the Liberal Party trying to claim that Pierre Poilievre is bringing American-style politics. This is the Liberals' Twitter account. And they say Pierre Poilievre is bringing far-right American-style politics to Canada. Dun, dun, dun. And Wayne says, And there's pictures of, Guilbeault with John Kerry and John Kerry with Catherine McKenna and Chrystia Freeland with Hillary Clinton and Justin Trudeau with Barack Obama and Freeland and Clinton and Biden and Trudeau and so on and so on and so forth. So the people bringing American politics to Canada are certainly not the Conservatives, although I'm sure they may be at times, right? But the American style politics they're being accused of is dirty politics. But the Liberals are engaging in dirty politics. National Post, let's talk about money because money is a big deal. And National Post is reporting, expect $7 billion in higher federal deficit, slower growth for Canadian economy, the PBO report. So that's not good. Yikes, $7 billion? Like $7 billion with a B. It's really hard to imagine $1 billion, but seven of them, $7 billion. And that's higher federal deficit. So who's spending that? It's not surprising when you have a Rhodes Scholar reporter. I don't think they give Rhodes scholarships for economists. Do they have Rhodes Scholarship economists? It's a arts thing, right? So Rhodes Scholar economist is not a thing. They say, I'm sorry if that's what your credentials are at economic conferences. I'm a Rhodes Scholar. Oof. Sorry about that. Moving on. And Chrystia Freeland has done this to us. Justin Trudeau has done this to us with bad policies. Here is very bad news. And Mr. Stash is sharing a Financial Post article talking about mortgage delinquency. And it says mortgage delinquency rates were up more than 50%. Well, at the end of last year from the year before, with two provinces leading the way, says Equifax Canada Credit Trends Report for the fourth quarter. In Ontario and British Columbia, the country's most expensive housing markets, delinquency rates soared by 135.2% and 62% respectively, rising above pre-pandemic levels. So yeah, that's very bad news. And here's the rates as shown on CTV News. Nationally, mortgage delinquency rates are up from 22 to 23, 52% nationally. In Ontario, 135.2%. In BC, 62.2%. That's crazy town. That's not good, right? That's not good at all. That's people who can't afford to pay their mortgage. Why can't they afford to pay their mortgage? Because everything else is too expensive. Pierre Poilievre says, time for a tent, right? Pierre Poilievre says, not long ago, Trudeau encouraged Canadians to borrow, saying rates were at historic lows. After his inflationary spending sent rates soaring, people are now missing payments on mortgages and credit cards. That Trudeau is not worth the cost, right? And it's incredible the waste that is happening across the board in our government, and sending it to foreign countries, et cetera, while people in Ontario and Canada across the nation are struggling to afford food, rent, basics, but we're Slava Ukraini. Right? Doug Ford says people are hurting. They need a break. It's time for the Bank of Canada to start lowering interest rates tomorrow. That's today. Are they going to lower the rates today? Nope. If they lower the rates, the inflation's going to, inflation's still happening. But if they're in a quagmire, they can't lower the rates and they can't raise the rates. They're kind of stuck where they are. I don't think they can do much of anything. And they're going to try and start lowering the rates, but I think that's going to kick off more inflation stuff. So stuck doesn't begin to discuss it. Dan McTeague says, amazing that there are still 50% of Canadians who can't see the flashing warnings of a country that's collapsing financially, then AKA to their poor choices in voting to commit the country to certain ruin. So this is the Bank of Nova Scotia economist Derek Holt, and he's talking about the bad policy direction in Canada in his daily notes to clients. He says, in a bigger picture sense, I'm deeply worried about the public policy in my country. Productivity is in a tailspin. A greater share of GDP is spent on here today, gone tomorrow current spending by government and households than in decades. Tax policy is uncompetitive, and business bashing has become commonplace by people who have never spent 2 seconds working in private industry. Competition policy changes face serious criticism. Changes to labor laws have benefited unions, while collective bargaining exercises are driving wage growth to the moon despite collapsing productivity. Major sectors of the economy are literally being taken over by government, with recent examples being childcare, dental care, and now pharmacare. Do we get any better outcomes from the state-run health and education sectors? Tried visiting an ER lately? Enough said. So things aren't going well, and they appear to be getting worse. Welcome to my show. Jeepers creepers. The food professor says, not a great indicator for Canada. The gap in gross domestic product GDP per capita between Canada and the United States has widened by 106% since 2015. So since Justin Trudeau came to office, 2015, the year Trudeau came to office. So it could be before Trudeau came to office too, but 106% difference. Wow. That's a huge discrepancy, right? That's huge. Absolutely monstrous. Here's what we're also wasting money on in Canada. Probably what happened here is somebody in the male washroom in Canadian forces got upset or had a sense of these don't belong here and did something like remove the tampon thing from the bathroom. And so in response, they got boxes and boxes and boxes of tampons delivered to the male bathroom in the unit. An anonymous member of our armed forces leaked these photos, says Canada Proud, of 6-foot-high stacked boxes of tampons delivered to male washrooms on a Canadian Forces base in Ontario. This seems punitive. Like, oh, you want to complain about it? We'll put these in here. Like, that's storage. What are they going to do with it? Right? Like, what a waste of money. Here's somebody got Justin Trudeau riding a tampon, flying on a tampon. Yeah. The idiocy of this country never ceases to amaze me. Here's more waste. And this one is unbelievable in ways that I can't. Well, you'll understand in just a second. Holly Doan says, a sharp response to our story about the Government of Canada Information and for First Nations account, says a program offering free snowmobiles to Arctic residents that costs $32 million in free snowmobiles. given out to Arctic families last year. Okay. Do you know what happens to these things? When the winter is over, the machines are left on still frozen lakes to sink and get a new sled in the fall. Seen it with my own eyes many times. This is true. I went on an exchange to Northwest Territories, and when the sled ran out of gas, they would just be left there, may not be gas to fill them up. Sleds were free, so the families don't really care. I don't blame them. I knew a guy that would drive up north in Manitoba and pick up sleds that had been left out on the ice and take them back to sell them, left on the ice to be sunk during the spring. New sleds every fall. A family member worked in Nunavut. Apparently there are sleds left all over the Arctic there. Once the sleds stop working, they don't get fixed. They just leave them where they were until the new ones come from the government. A sled wasteland. Unbelievable. Who wants to do... How many sleds do you think we'd need to recover and sell to make a trip to the Northwest Territories to collect sleds to sell worthwhile? Anybody? Trip to the Northwest Territories? Canada Poly presents? On the ground reporting. We're here riding a snowmobile. We've commandeered from the ice in Northwest Territories. Let's have some fun. I've never ridden a snowmobile. I would be terrible at it. My husband lived and worked in the Arctic. He told me they'd leave them on the ice. Ice would melt and they'd get a new one every year. Well, I mean, could you be industrious? Like, is there not one person up there who thinks to themselves, I could probably export these things south to, a friend who's selling snowmobiles down there, like make a tidy profit? Nobody's thinking this? I got to move to the Northwest Territories. I mean, it's a lot of work to go collect sleds off the ice, I guess. You got to have a can of gas. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful